And so one of the things that might be a big advantage of the taxis is that vehicle, as Dave pointed out before, the issue of car share, right, and the impact on parking. And I'm assuming in Montreal that's an issue, the parking aspects of a car share or a private vehicle.
I mean, to drill down into this, I mean, what we were preliminarily thinking is doing some type of study to measure the carbon footprint of taxi cabs across the world, and to come up. And there's some figures that the Conference of Mayors has on it, and then maybe have a study about the various approaches to alternative fuels and the pluses and minuses of them, and how basically in a solution-based approach to that. I think it would be very helpful, because I think unless I'm missing something, I'm unaware of any comprehensive study that really covers all of that. There's bits and pieces. There's pieces of lawsuits. There's pieces of surveys and PowerPoints floating around. But I haven't really seen, unless you can correct me, a study that really goes beyond expert testimony or folks giving presentations at conferences.
Matt, you might want to, I guess, we would add in Montreal and cities all across Canada and North America, that decision has been made day in and day out by school systems, by many other entities that have to transport people. And when you have people in a corridor, one-to-one sort of transportation, boy, that transit bus makes an awful lot of sense, the footprints. But when it's many origins to a single destination, they go out and they basically hire taxi cabs to make that route for them, because it saves in energy and cost and labor. So on a micro level, boy, it's really been done, and the evidence is there. But on a macro level, you're right. We probably need to be able to show research that it saves at certain times of the day and certain kinds of trips. It definitely is much less of a carbon footprint. But taxi cabs are used, schools don't like to talk about it, but taxi cabs are used for after school hours, for low density in city after city across North America.
Thank you. We have time for one more question?
Yeah, my name is Wally Beck. I'm with HDR. Karen invited me at the last minute, so many of you, probably most of you don't know me. To address if you're looking for research projects, I think that was touched on is, I used to run a public transit system, and I got into the dark side in the consulting business about 10 years ago. And so the statement I'm making is, every time I do a public transportation study, whether it's accessible transit or conventional transit, I talk to the taxi operators. There's not enough research out there that I can draw from, but I look at each municipality and develop their own business case and talk to various unions to show that we're not eroding their collective bargaining unit and that sort of thing. So there's ways around it, and we used in the 80s taxis to supplement conventional transit service. So it's out there. It'd be nice to see how much is out there and what works and what doesn't. And in terms of when you do the research, the carbon footprint, I think today is quantifying that is important, and there are ways of going out and doing that. So that type of research would benefit, I think, the transit and the paratransit industry, and I think probably the taxi industry. So,
if I could just add one thing on the carbon footprint, I haven't seen any studies directly looking at taxis, but certainly there's plenty of studies that have estimated the carbon footprint per passenger mile of commuter vans, and they compare very, very favorably to every other type of transit and private and cars as well, where the carbon dioxide per passenger mile of commuter vans is very, very low, much lower than conventional buses or light rail even.
Yeah. It's a very good point, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about that in about 10 minutes or so. We're going to do some discussion on paratransit. I think everybody realizes that there's tremendous reform opportunities there, including, there is a study being proposed now, an abstract that I saw at City College, where they're working on a study to estimate the carbon footprint of paratransits, as I mentioned earlier, and then figure out ways how to reduce it. So I think that's one general area. Does anybody have any last-minute questions on anything, including... In particular, we have time maybe for one more question. I think we touched on sustainable transportation. We touched upon most of the general topics, except for taxi technology. If anybody has any ideas, after the conference, this is basically designed to get the wheels in motion. We're going to do a survey, I think. We always have a post-conference survey. I think we're going to have a more detailed survey on ideas that you may come up with between now and then on what specific studies you'd like to see that would actually help you do your job and do it better, not just abstract things. Like the gentleman from Montreal, I assume you want that information for policymaking reasons. And, especially with the technology, we had a lot of presentations on technology, but what types of applications of the supercomputer data would you like to see in your jurisdiction in order to make policy, and which policies? Yes, Ingve?
Yes, I'm Yngve Westerlund from Sweden, and I'm a paratransit advocate. And I have a poster session out here that you may be welcome to come to. But in the handout in your file book here is a picture that actually addresses the footprint. There is a study or a firm in Norway that has looked into the comparison between taxis and buses. You might want to look at that as a kind of a starter, and I think there is more research needed for.
Is that limited, Ingve, just to Norway, or is it?
No, this was for a Norwegian situation where they compared a diesel bus with 5% mix of biofuels with a fuel-efficient taxi. And it says that if you are not running deadheading with a taxi, you would be, with a taxi with 2 passengers, would be equal with a bus with 15 passengers. But you can just look it up there, and it could be a start for some kind of more future research, because I have tried to verify this in Sweden, and they said it's pretty much okay.
Okay, great. We're out of time. I apologize. We're going to take a 5-minute break and stretch our legs and come back and talk more about this and paratransits and parataxis. But I want to thank our panelists for spending the time and effort and for starting a discussion. We've got a lot of work to do.